Hello everyone and welcome back to round 6 of the FIDE Grand Swiss, currently being played in Riga, Latvia. It's Daniil Dubov versus Ivan Saric, two very strong players who are also incredible attackers, so the game is bound to be exciting right from the start, as you'll see. And it's a very enjoyable game. Today is a rest day, so we're not going to be having round 7, but we have some extra time to check up on some games from round 6, and this is one such game. I think the absolute best one from the previous round. But of course I haven't checked all of them. There are far too many, so if you guys have seen some that deserves to be shown, do of course use hashtag suggestion. So that being said, let's check it out. Dubov with the white pieces opens with e4. We have c5 going for the Sicilian defense, as Ivan usually does. We have knight to f3, d6, and now bishop to b5 check, going for the canal attack. Knight to d7, and now Dubov castles. We have a6 challenging the bishop, and now bishop back to d3. If you guys are wondering why such a weird square for the bishop, well, it's because e2 is a bit too passive and c4 is a bit too active. For example, if the bishop is retreated to c4, then we can play knight f6, attack the pawn. Now the pawn is hanging. If the bishop was on d3, the pawn would not be hanging, and once we defended b5, it's very annoying. Now you can't play bishop b3 because of c4, and then you will have to put the bishop back. So that's why the bishop is placed on d3 right away. So the pawn is defended, and you are ready to play c2 and tuck the bishop back into... you can play c3 and tuck the bishop back to c2. So here knight gf6, and now c3. Our pawn is nicely defended, so we can play c3, b5, and now pawn to a4, attacking this b5 pawn. We have bishop to b7, and now a captures on b5, a captures on b5. Now the white rook is hanging, so we have to do something about this. Rook captures on a8, queen captures, and we have this position where white's e4 pawn is hanging. It's being attacked 3 times, but also black's b5 pawn is hanging. So here we have knight to a3. You could capture on b5. It's of course playable, but Dubov plays knight to a3, and I think Ivan knew that Dubov would go for this line because Dubov already had it this year in the Air Things Masters against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, and Maxim was able to win this game against Dubov. So this is probably, I would say, what Ivan was going for. So here we don't have bishop captures on e4 like Maxim played against Dubov in that tournament, but instead we have b4, and well, what do you play here? Well, knight to b5, going for that knight to c7 check, which would win the black queen. So queen to a5, guarding the c7 square. And now there is a game where queen to e2 was played, but here we have c captures on b4, and it is now only as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Dubov prepared this. We have c captures on b4, and now bishop to c4. Now the bishop retreats to its rightful square, and now you are ready to start pushing those pawns. Yes, you are giving up the e4 pawn, but it's something that's really not a problem. The black king is still in the center of the board, so you will get some counterattacking chances. So knight captures on e4, d3, attacking the knight. Now, of course, if the knight goes back, we can just play rook to e1 and put some pressure on the black king. So Ivan plays d5, and this is the absolute best way to counter Dubov's idea, as this is a very strong attacker. Dubov is trying to give you some material for the attack, so makes sense to neutralize the threats. So bishop to f4, now again going for that knight to c7 check, and now of course e5. We have to give something back. Knight captures on e5, and now this is the moment where the magic really happens. So the question is, what do you play here? Well, you could play a lot of things, but here we have d captures on c4, just grabbing that bishop. And the problem now is you can't really recapture here. If you capture the knight, then queen captures on d7 is just checkmate. So that's not an option. You have to be down material at least a little bit. But how can you continue this? Well, the absolute main idea of the sort of the source of the position is queen to h5, but it's such a complicated move that it's really not a wonder it wasn't played. So the idea is now, of course, queen captures on f7 check, king to d8, queen captures on d7 checkmate. And there are two ways you can prevent this. One is to play g6, which is not all that impressive, because after g6 we can simply play knight captures on c4 and attack black's queen. And after queen to a4 we further attack it with b3, and now we probably have a trade of queens, captures, captures, and now white will have this very strong pass pawn. For example, if knight e to c5, we're going to play rook to e1 check, and after knight to e6 blocking, we're going to play this knight c to d6 with check, and now you can't really do all that much. The bishop is hanging. If you play king to d8, the f7 pawn hangs with check, then the rook falls, so we would probably see something like captures, captures with check, and after king e7, knight captures on b7, and we have this position where it should be fairly equal, but white has this dangerous pass pawn. Maybe it could, you know, be something. So what you would have to do after queen to h5 is not g6, but just the straightforward queen captures on b5. Allow queen captures here. Now the queen is defending the knight here, so it's not a problem. You're not getting checkmated. And after the king moves, now we see something like d captures on e4, knight captures on e5, bishop captures. We see queen captures on e5, queen captures on b7, and we get this position where black is up a piece, but white has excellent chances. Of course, if black defends well, nothing is really happening. For example, king e8, and now after rook to a1 we play bishop to e7. Now we're ready for this rook to a8 check. We can block with the bishop, and it's not really an issue. Black will be able to defend this. So this is the absolute main way to do this, and it's super complicated. But as you can see, if black defends well, it doesn't really yield all that much. So here we have d captures on c4. So a temporary piece sacrifice, asking black, what do you do here? Well, it makes sense to remove as many attackers from the board as possible. Also, checkmate is still being threatened, so we eliminate the knight on e5, bishop captures on e5, and now bishop to c5. So here, if black castles, that's just it. You know, no problems for black anymore. But maybe this was rushed a little bit. f6 here would allow black to maybe consolidate it a little bit better, because also the f7 square is now available to the black king. And even if something like knight to c7 check, we play king e7, and after the bishop moves, now we play queen to c5. And everything is nicely defended. We can move the king, we can play bishop to d6, trade off everything, and we're gonna have a winning game. So maybe f6 is to be considered, but okay, bishop to c5, but this allows Dubov to just keep the black king in the center of the board pretty much forever. So bishop to d6, now the black king is not castling. We have bishop captures, knight captures with check, knight captures, and queen captures, now again preventing castles, and now bishop to c8. This is the only move. Rook to e1 check is coming, so of course the bishop must come to c8 to prevent this. So bishop to c8, rook to e1 check, now bishop to e6 blocking. Bishop to e6 blocking, and now how do you continue this? Well, again, you have to be very precise. If you go for the immediate c5 here, which makes sense, it's a bit too early. Just queen to d8, and now you don't really have all that much. Queen to c6 check. If king e7, we're going to play queen to queen to b7 with check, and now if queen to d7 we can pick up the pawn, but now black just gets his rook into the game, and that's it. You don't really have anything. If you deliver this check hoping for something, just queen blocks, and the black is better here. So Dubov has to play this with absolute surgical precision. He plays rook to d1. Now again, the queen can't move, otherwise queen to d8 will be checkmate. So queen to a8, Saric has to go all the way around. He has to play queen to c8, then queen to d7 to try and fend off the attack, and only now c5 by Dubov. Now the pawn is advancing, queen to c8, and now c6, not allowing queen to d7. So it seems that this rook is not going to see the light of day anytime soon, unless you play h5, and that's exactly what Ivan does. Now the rook can be put into the game via the h6 square, then maybe you can shift it to g6, maybe even f6, all depending on what white plays. So here, rook back to e1, now the bishop can no longer move, and now queen to d8, if you play this now, it's possible, but then queen captures on b4, then you get another pass pawn, and could be very scary. So instead, Ivan just continues with his plan, rook to h6, now comes rook to e5, and this is a really fine Dubovian move. You're just, putting that rook on a very nice square and asking, what do you do here? Of course, there are some threats of rook to b5 followed by rook to d8, which is just game over. So you have to be very quick about it. And the question is, How do you continue? The real question is, can you afford this b3 move? If you can, then it's great for you. If you play b3, the bishop now nicely defends the pawn, and you can prevent this pawn from reaching its destination. Then it's it's going to be great for you. For example, if you play rook to b5 here now, then queen to d8 is a problem. And now if rook to b8, we can simply play bishop to c8 to completely block this, and black is just winning here now. So there is time for b3. After b3, you'd have to figure out how to go about this. So instead of this, Ivan just played the queen to d8, and now Dubov, of course, very happily accepts this pawn. Queen captures on b4, and now you don't have to worry about any back rank issues because the queen and the rook are guarding the e1 square. So queen to c7, now you have to create some sort of a blockade here against the passed pawns, and now queen to c5. Now Dubov is preparing, of course, pawn to b4, then b5, b6, and if this pawn reaches b6, then of course it's game over. So queen to e7, offering a queen trade, and Dubov declines. Queen c3, we have queen back to c7, and now what does Dubov do? Well, of course, he pushes b4, as one always should. And now there's still time. I mean, the pawn still hasn't done anything all that impressive, and how do you make progress here? Well, the problem is if you unpin with something like king to f8, then you really give white a tempo. Queen to c5 check, and after king j just b5. You're already guarding this square, so there's no real way of defending this. You're going to play something like bishop to c8, but still just rook to e8 with check, and after king to h7, you're going to make some breathing room for your king. For the moment, the b6 is impossible because now the c6 pawn would hang, but you have all the time in the world. You're going to play whatever. For example, black plays h4. He doesn't want this pawn to be a target here. Rook to f8. And black really doesn't have a move to play. It's such an ugly position. If he tries some trickery with something like rook to f6, we can simply play queen h5 check, and after the rook goes back, we can play queen captures on f7. And if this gets traded off the board, rook h5, yes, black is up a piece, but we're just going to play rook f8, attack the bishop, and there's no point in trying to save the bishop because after that, just c7, c8. So we're going to play something like rook captures on b5, now rook captures on c8, and white is, of course, winning. It's a rook and pawn endgame. White is up 2 pawns. So instead, after b4, even plays king to e7. It's a stronger and the more resilient way to go, because now after something like queen c5 check, you can block with queen to d6. You don't have to push the king away. So instead, we have b5 right away, and now rook to h8. Now even wants to bring the rook into the game and try and do some damage here. So here we have queen to g3, a very interesting move by Dubov. You could, of course, play many different ideas, but this is just the sharpest one. You're kind of attacking that g7 pawn, but also your real threat is just rook captures on e6, king captures, and queen captures on c7. This comes with check, so of course it's completely winning. So Dubov sets a trap and even sets a counter trap. He plays rook to d8. Now he says, all right, if you play this now, then we know how this ends. Captures with check, captures, I lose the queen, but you get checkmated. So that's what Ivan is hoping for. Not really, he of course knows Dubov is not going to fall for this, but it's a very nice active defense. So here Dubov just plays h4. He creates some breathing room for his king, so he doesn't have to worry about back rank issues. And now is the well, now it's just the right moment for Ivan to finally utilize what he's been working for, and I'm going to show you a line that allows black to do just such thing. So for example, rook to d1 check, king to h2, and now queen to d6, preparing to bring the rook to d5 to trade off everything from the board. Yes, you have to give up one pawn, but it doesn't really matter. Rook to d5, and now for example, if f4, we simply trade. Rook captures on e5, queen captures on e5, queen captures, f captures, and king to d8. Yes, black is up a piece, but it's 5 pawns against 2. This will be a very easy draw. For example, b6, king to c8, and then now after g3, we're going to play bishop to d5. We're going to play c7. After king to b7, king to f4, we give up this pawn, and now king g5, and now light square bishop will have to keep guarding those pawns unless you want to lose this game with black, it being up a piece. So this is the way black should continue, but it's of course not an easy decision to make, and also black is very low on time. So here Ivan played king to f8. It's really the thing that he's been working for the entire game. He wanted to get this rook from h8 to d8, and now he was successful in doing so. The king is no longer on the e file, so even the bishop can move, and good things could happen for black now. The only problem is the position is now completely lost for Ivan. So feel free to pause the video and win this game for Dubov while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this, we have to say brilliancy. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is of course rook captures on e6. It doesn't matter that it doesn't come with check, it's still completely winning, and this is what Dubov played. And there's even a recording of this great moment on camera, so I'm gonna play it for you. Olympia posted it on Twitter, so let's just check it out. There you can see Dubov plays rook captures on e6, and you can see such powerful energy. It completely blew Ivan away from the board. We can even check it out one more time. And Olympia even said that Dubov's games are such fire that they keep him playing next to a fire extinguisher. So there you have it one more time, just calmly grabbing that, and Ivan knows that now it's all over. Rook captures on e6 was played, and the queen is still hanging. So you have to capture the queen. So queen captures was played, f captures on g3, and now f captures on e6. So Ivan is now up a full rook, but it doesn't matter. Just c7 by Dubov. And now if you try and block this, just b6, king to e7, and b7, and that's it. Rook captures, we bring a queen into the game, it's all over. So Ivan has to give the rook back. He plays king to e7, but it doesn't help. C captures on d8, and it doesn't matter. You can bring any piece into the game you want. The position is still winning for white because this is basically a king and pawn endgame. So Dubov brought the queen into the game. He's not feeling, like goofing around. King captures on d8, and now king to f2. And now we have this king and pawn endgame where Dubov is up a pawn, and it's an outside-ish pass pawn. This pawn that would never be here if you haven't pushed it to b4, at that correct moment. So king to c7, king to e3, king to b6. Now we have king to d4, king captures on b5, and king to e5. And it was in this position on move 42 that Ivan Saric resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The position is completely winning, and we can just show it real quickly. If you go here, we're just going to capture a pawn. If you go, for those pawns down the board, it doesn't really matter. King e3, king captures here, king f2. We're going to go king to h6. You're going to capture here, we're going to capture here, captures here, and now this pawn is just winning. After king to e5, Ivan resigned, and another great victory for Daniil Dubov, and a tough loss for Ivan Saric, because he also lost in the previous round to Alexei Shirov after a really impressive and hard-fought game, but very nice for Dubov. And I would also like to mention that sometimes, when you're going through these games, there are like 108 players are playing this tournament, and you go through the final positions, and you see this position, and you're like, nah, I'm not going to even watch this game. It's some sort of a silly game that went straight for the end game, when in fact it's pure fire on the board, as they have Dubov playing next to a fire extinguisher. But that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys are interested in the standings after these 6 rounds, so we have a 5-people tie. Firuzja still in first place with 4.5 out of 6, followed by Maxim Vashiolagrov, Evgeny Nair, Krishna Sasikiran, and Alexei Shirov. So all 5 of them on 4.5, followed by a bunch of people, of course, with 4 out of 6. So we'll see what happens in round 7. But today's a rest day, so we're gonna check out some games from round 6 before tomorrow's game start. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I really had an incredible time just preparing this for you, because there were so many lines that I haven't shown you because it would last forever, but I hope that the ones I have you guys enjoyed. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Lucas Theokaris, James Maybury, Abdul El Traore, Frank Holmes, and David Leal for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this incredible event until it ends. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.